Chris Mannix, host of the Chris Mannix Show, weekday afternoons, NBC Sports Radio, the 24-hour sports talk network. Download the app, subscribe to the Mannix podcast. Chris, what has happened to my man? It's a good time to be a Sixers fan all of a sudden. We've had these conversations over the years. It was all gloom and doom, but it seems like things are finally turning around.
Yeah, inching ever so closely to that final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, playing with confidence, and with the return of Ben Simmons kind of right around the corner. It's a very good time to be a Philly fan.
It's interesting because, at first it was kind of like, all right, they're winning a couple of games. Then they beat a team like the Clippers. They've won a couple of road games. They hadn't beat the Bucks in 14 straight. Now they beat them twice in their own building. Do you have to start? Are teams around the league starting to take this team serious?
Oh, absolutely. Obviously they take Joel Embiid extremely seriously. I mean, he's the real deal at that position. Probably not going to make the All-Star team this year, but that's just delaying the inevitable. Barring another injury, he's going to be an All-Star next year. And they've been getting good contributions from the guys around him. You saw Nerlens Noel really step up and play a big game the other night. I mean, the guards are playing a little bit better with this team. You're seeing guys that generally don't play big roles stepping in and making big shots. I mean, is it sustainable? Who knows? I mean, I think over the second half of the season, you'll probably see this team slump once more, as young teams do, and Ben Simmons is going to go through some significant growing pains as he comes back off that injury and tries to kind of reintegrate himself into this team. But these are when you're playing like this and you're this type of team and you're at least within eye shot of the last spot in the Eastern Conference, that's a huge positive for Philadelphia moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if you had a blueprint, are you kind of ripping it up and just kind of letting it be fluid and just going with it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're ripping it up per se, but you're not overly concerned with losing to get more ping pong balls at this point. You want to win, and certainly there are trades that still need to be made. I mean, I was speaking with a couple of NBA executives last night who are still kind of sniffing around Jahlil Okafor and Nerlens Noel and seeing what they can what the offers might be to get one of those guys. But when you're Philly and you got 5 guys right now averaging in double figures, Dario Saric right behind them, and Gerald Henderson right behind him, you're getting good, balanced offensive production, and that's exactly what you want with this team. I give Brett Brown a ton of credit. I mean, to survive what he survived over the last few years and now have this team headed in this direction, I mean, that's pretty impressive, I think.
Yeah, I think, one thing about Brett Brown, I think that we have to give him a lot of credit for, Chris, is the fact that he has looked at Jahlil Okafor and basically told him, you're not going to play. That's not an easy decision for coaches to make when you have a guy that talented and you basically have to tell him you're not part of the rotation. I think that's something that gets overlooked in terms of the credit for this team's recent play.
Yeah, it's tough, especially a player like Okafor who was accomplished as much as he's accomplished at lower levels and really believes, I know this, that he's a starting center on a playoff-type team in the NBA. But, look, maybe he's just trying to light a fire into this guy. I mean, everybody knows that, one of those bigs has got to go at some point, whether it's Noel or Okafor. Somebody's got to be moved to try to not just clear the logjam in that front court, but to get yourself something that works better, whether it's a more perimeter-oriented 2-guard, another point guard into that mix. I mean, that's the biggest weakness for the Sixer team right now, and to have Jahlil Okafor on the bench, maybe that will spark him a little bit in practice where you can give Brett Brown reasons to put him in the game. So bold move, but I like it.
Chris Mannix, the Mannix podcast, The Vertical, NBC Sports. Is there a move, in your opinion, that is out there at this deadline for particularly Okafor? It seems that right now the success with Noel, you might not want to rock that boat.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I still think if there is a deal that can get you a floor-spacing 4-man or backcourt help that's not just going to be a Band-Aid, but somebody that could help you for the next 5-6 years and grow with this young group, you take it. You've got to jump at it. I mean, it's just, as well as Noel has played right now, I don't know anybody in the NBA that really believes that a Embiid-Noel frontcourt in today's NBA, where there's so much need for spacing, is actually going to survive. Maybe he's a backup big, maybe not, but I don't know about that. The other part of dealing for one of these Sixers bigs that comes up a lot is not the cost that it would take to get them, but the belief that other executives have that both Noel and Okafor have maybe kind of inflated views of what they should be. When I say that, they don't want to be acquiring a guy that thinks he's a franchise player. What other teams look at Okafor and Noel is they see kind of secondary, third type options. They see guys that can fit into specific roles. They don't see a guy that they're necessarily going to build around in either one of those players. And maybe there's a difference in mindset there, if that makes any sense. That Okafor and Noel still think that they can go to another team and fulfill this, kind of unrequited destiny, where the teams that are acquiring them are looking at them as sort of spokes in the wheel and key cogs to what could make them ultimately successful.
Well, it's almost the way the Sixers are viewing them now, right? Noel's kind of a role player. I mean, I know he's got extended minutes the last couple nights with Embiid out, but they're using him in that role. And I agree with you. Like, does he see himself long term? Because eventually you would think Embiid's minutes are going to get extended, which means that's going to cut into Noel's time.
Yeah, and how he accepts that will be a variable in Brian Colangelo's future decisions with him. Look, if Noel is content being a backup big, playing 25 to 30 minutes per night, rebounding, defending, getting a chance to maybe even score some against second units, he can be an invaluable player with that team. But if he fancies himself a starting center or a starter on a playoff team that's doing something else, I mean that could be a big time problem. The issue with trading both Noel and Okafor right now, at least most pressing one, is that the market is pretty well flooded with bigs. There are a lot of bigs that range from really talented to Nick Vucevic in Orlando to a lesser degree Costa Koufos in Sacramento. Yusuf Nurkic in Denver is on the trade block. There are probably anywhere from half dozen to a dozen capable to better big men that are on the market. So teams that are inquiring with Philadelphia, I mean, they'll make an offer. But if Philadelphia wants too much, they'll turn around and go to the next guy because there are comparable type players, complementary players that are available that they can jump on.
Chris Mannix with us, a little look at the NBA. Looks like the Bulls imploding. They seem to be a mess. Is it inevitable to you, Chris, that Jimmy Butler's out of there?
No, it's not inevitable because when you have a player like Butler, you better get franchise value back in return. Not only is he an all-star, but he's under what is currently a pretty manageable contract. It's a max-type deal, but it's an old max-type deal. So you've got him tied long term. You better get something real back in return for Jimmy Butler if you're going to deal him. And I don't see those offers out there right now. You can't rule it out because, as I reported at the end of last season, they were motivated to hear offers for Jimmy Butler, and that may have changed then, but it could pivot once again back right now. But you mentioned the implosion. There's nothing that's been more predictable in the NBA. The Bulls not playing well. They were a team that was poorly constructed. They were a bunch of guys who were either athletic or were once athletic in the case of Dwayne Wade, but can't shoot. And you don't survive in today's NBA unless you have multiple three-point shooters on the floor at all times. And the Bulls, they never did. Rajon Rondo was a mistake. I don't know, the jury's still out if Dwayne Wade was a mistake, but this was a team that was frankly poorly constructed, and we're seeing the results of that.
What about what's going to happen with Melo and the Knicks? There's some rumors that they offered him up for Love. That was kind of laughed at. Is Melo finishing out this year with New York?
I don't think the Love stuff was real. I was told pretty specifically that while they are looking at multiple scenarios involving Carmelo Anthony, that Cleveland right now was not one of them. I think the Boston Celtics are a real possibility. I think the LA Clippers are a real possibility. And I think they're actively trying to do it. And look, they wouldn't be doing all this legwork, if they didn't have at least the tacit approval of Carmelo Anthony that he would waive his no-trade clause for a specific number of teams. They just wouldn't do it. It's a waste of time with him having that no-trade clause. So, we're less than a month away from the trade deadline, but the way things are trending right now, I'll be honest, I'd be surprised if Carmelo Anthony was with the Knicks after the trade deadline.
All right, last one for Chris. You mentioned less than a month. We know Golden State. We all kind of feel Cleveland, although they got their issues going on right now. But in your opinion, who needs to make a deal to put themselves in the conversation? Because we've had this conversation about how many title contenders, and we seemingly say there's 2, maybe 3. Who needs to make a deal?
Yeah, I think it's Toronto. I think it's a no-brainer either. They've got to find somebody in that front court that can give them some scoring punch. And that player to me is Paul Millsap. I mean, they've got to find a way to extract him from Atlanta. Atlanta's kind of back and forth. They put him on the market, they take him off. They don't know what they're going to try to be. The Kyle Korver trade, it hasn't destroyed their team in the way that some might have thought it would do, and it hasn't created this fire sale either within the Hawks organization. But if you're Toronto, you've got to recognize that in about a month, Kyle Lowry is going to turn 31 years old. You've got a team that's not aging per se, but it's built to win right now. And if you add Paul Millsap to that mix, you may not be on par with the Cavaliers, but watching them kind of implode and deteriorate themselves over the last week or so, you know that there's an opportunity there. So if I'm Masai Ujiri, and if the asking price is Norman Powell, if it's Terrence Ross, I jump on that. It's a risk, and you're going to have to pay Paul Millsap $100 million plus if you're going to keep him around beyond this season. But it's the kind of risk where at this point of the Raptors' sort of state of affairs, they've got to take.
Listen to Chris Mannix on NBC Sports Radio, the Vertical, the Mannix podcast, a lot of NBA, boxing fans as well. Always enjoy catching up with you, Chris. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.